Hi everyone, my name is Alexa Carenti, and today I will be talking about the Yellowstone National Park Bison Management Plan Final Environmental Impact Statement. Yellowstone National Park is one of the United States' largest national parks, and it is located on the border of Idaho and Montana, but is mostly in the state of Wyoming. Yellowstone National Park has a rich history. It was established by the National Park Protection Act in 1872, and it was the first national park established in the United States. It is federally funded through the Department of the Interior, and it is home to diverse ecosystems as well as a large range of species. Many of you likely know about the wolf reintegration project that happened a few years ago after the wolf population was decimated in the entire West. So today I will be focusing on the bison population, which is also sometimes in jeopardy due to human activity, and there are some there's some contention between farmers on the borders of the national park as well as reliance on these bison by native tribes that have been pushed aside or still use the park for their cultural and traditional practices. So this EIS is focused mainly on bison management in Yellowstone National Park. Um, it's prepared by the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior, since the Department of the Interior is, um, since the National Park Service is a part of the Department of the Interior. The main goal is to manage the bison herd while balancing various interests of humans. So this mostly has to do with tribal trust, safety of visitors to the park, livestock concerns, and ecosystem health within the park. So this environmental impact statement was 246 pages long, but the bison management plan would be carried out over 500,000 acres of land and would have widespread effects on a number of stakeholders. NEPA was required through this process, especially because the Department of the Interior oversaw this project and it works under federal environmental law. So throughout this environmental impact statement, most of the decision making was based on environmental factors, while social factors were kind of placed on the back burner. However, the social stakeholders that were involved were mostly farmers and livestock owners, whose main concern was disease transmission from bison to cattle, native tribes that rely on bison for cultural and sustenance, and tourists whose safety is important within the park. So the data collected to support this environmental impact statement was collected over many years within Yellowstone National Park. And this is mainly because it is such an expansive tract of land that it's really challenging to gain really comprehensive data yearly or even bi-yearly. So the bison herds were tested for disease, as were cattle on farms surrounding the park, since this was one of the main concerns. But these tests date back to 2016, which is not exactly recent. So because of the expanse of the park, there was a lot of imaging used to determine the carrying capacity of the park and to try to figure out where the healthiest number would be to keep the bison herd at. Three alternatives were proposed. Alternative one was the no action alternative. So at the moment, the focus is on reducing population of the bison herd if it's over 4,300 heads. So another emphasis here is preventing disease transmission to livestock, whereas alternative two, which is the preferred alternative, focuses mainly on collaboration with native tribes, as well as keeping the bison population at a slightly higher level than it naturally is at the moment, with some reductions when necessary, and continued disease management. Alternative three requires less disease management and allows more room for natural selection, public harvest, and tribal hunting, while there is a greater chance that disease could be spread to livestock. Through this EIS, it was challenging for the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior to effectively find similar instances where bison management was an issue because the national park is such a unique ecosystem, and bison are not found many places in the United States, nor are they really found anywhere outside of Yellowstone. So there was a lot of data collected, but there were very few real comparative situations that those in charge of this project could look to. Public participation was encouraged throughout the entire project. During the scoping project, part of the project, my apologies, there were over 2,500 letters or comments from the public, as well as more comments from local government, state government, and federal government, and other organizations and non-governmental organizations. However, there was still more emphasis on the environmental aspects of this project than there were on social issues. This is a serious problem, especially concerning the native tribal people who live near the park, especially because of the deep history rooted in colonialism and these groups of people being pushed and having to be forced to assimilate into American society. So the bison is a really important part of their lives and their culture. And one thing that I thought was really lacking from this EIS was more emphasis on their needs and how the change in the bison herds would really affect them. The monitoring process would be a continued process helped by native tribes and obviously National Park Service staff. This would include regular testing of the bison population for diseases that could spread to cattle. Additionally, federal funding continues to help the National Park Service, and adaptive management practices are put into place so that if different effects occur that are negative, mitigation strategies can be continuously adapted and changed in order to meet the needs of the park, of the bison, of the livestock owners, of the park visitors, and of the native tribes. So, after looking over this environmental impact statement, I believe that it has met each of the six principles for a domestic social impact assessment. With this being said, I think that there could have been more focus on social impacts through the writing, even though each principle was brought up in one way or another. This EIS does not go into the depth of an SIA that I would like, but I would call it sufficient, and with some further detail, I believe it could be great. At the end of the day, as I've already stated, I think that the needs of the native tribes were overlooked in a way, even though they were involved throughout the process. I wish there had been more background data on their needs and their thoughts. Through reading this EIS, I did not see a lot of mention of either the farmers or the native tribes unless it was about how the bison populations would affect them. Little about how they felt or what they thought. And I think that that would be an important thing to add in the future if they ever need to revise this statement. With that being said, I would give this final environmental impact statement a B due to the room for improvement that I've already pointed out. But I do think that it is sufficient and that it does a very good job of weighing the pros and cons of the very unique system that is Yellowstone, especially because it is so different than any other ecosystem in the United States. And it's protected in a way that's different. So there are species that are not often seen. And it's also a very fragile environment. So, with all that being said, I think that the National Park Service did as best as they could. Although I will say, um, I do have some concerns regarding the fact that the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior sits under the executive branch because this means that there could be a lack of stability in the future and nothing's promised because things can change from one president's term to another, as we are already seeing now with the cutting of of the National Park Service that are necessary for the parks to continue to run smoothly and continue to be pristine and protected for all of the US citizens and even those who travel from out of the country to visit. So I would give it a B. I think they did a good job. It could be great with a little more work. Thank you very much.